Just before we begin, we've got John Douse with us tonight. And Dousey, since you do such a good job, could you do the acknowledgement for us?
Hi. I've been thinking a lot about my grandfather recently. My grandfather was born in Bridgetown, Jubilee, place of the Germans, in 1890. So his life today would be 133. He's very old. He was very old when I first knew him. Severely disabled man. He didn't hold back. And his first playmates were Lookum and Yucky, two Noongar boys. And as a consequence, my grandfather spoke Noongar. He loved this butcher. He loved it. And when I think of him, I sometimes hold my head in shame because he told me in 1972, let's stop cutting down these trees, John. We've cut down too many already. In 1972. And he knew that the reason why that butcher was so beautiful and so rich with diversity was because the Noongars, they looked after it in a different way. Not like the people where we came from in Sussex, where you're lucky if you found a patch of a tree. You found a tree. You're lucky if you found a little patch with more than 2 species. And so I think we should regularly thank those people. And I do. Every time I pass Smokehouse, I apologise. Thank you. Noongar Manang, Noongar Roger, Noongar Palatol, Noongar Europe, the Dandy. Keeping this place. Thank you. Kaya.
Thank you, John. All right, so tonight we have got Michelle Johnson in-house with us. Big round of applause. Just to let you know, we will be using this. If anyone has a question, I'll dash over and hand the lapel mic to you so that your questions can be picked up. And because we're kicking it old school with our recording tonight, because Brock's not with us, so we're doing a bit of a phone jam over there in the corner. So thanks, Lockie, for doing that. But thank you everyone for coming, and let's get into it, hey? So, Tiny Uncertain Miracles. Has everybody read it? Yeah, it was awesome. It was a great book. Definitely unlike anything I'd read for a long time, actually. Yeah, it was beautiful. It really stayed with me and had me thinking about all different concepts of faith, not just faith in religious senses or faith in medicine and things like that. But also just faith in love and humanity and relationships and all sorts of things. Now, before we dive into the book, tell us a bit about yourself, Michelle. Now, tell us a bit about young Michelle. When you were a child, what was your relationship to reading?
What was my relationship to reading? Well, firstly, of course, thank you so much for coming out, and thank you for buying books. Thank you for reading books. Thank you for engaging in continuing to celebrate literature. I have been, well, I guess as a writer, I'm the apprentice model. So I've learnt to write through extensive reading. My story of my relationship to literacy, to books, got my mother in a lot of trouble because I don't think you guys, we're talking about old school, you'll remember the old turntables with the tiny little LPs that had the book that goes along with it, and you would read the book and ding, and you would turn the
Flip
page.
it, yeah.
And according to my mother, when I was just gone 3. I was apparently kind of a little feisty little thing,
I can't
and I would
imagine that.
and I would take over the lounge room and lie on my stomach, and just, there was one particular LP, and I just went over and over and over again. And apparently I taught myself to read with those little LPs. So I could read well before I went to kindergarten. Anyway, I got to kindergarten, and my mother was hauled up in front of the teachers to say, you can't do that. You can't teach your children to read. It's our job to teach your children to read. How dare you? And she's going, oh my God, I didn't. It was just her. So she was in a lot of trouble, but my love of reading never abated, and just was a voracious reader for my entire life. And I remember even when I was in primary school, and I somehow got a copy of The Master and Margarita by Bulgakov.
Oh,
because I thought it was a story.
Primary school.
I thought it was a story about a cat.
Oh, my word.
It wasn't.
Has anybody read that one?
It's wild Russian
yes,
literature.
Oh my gosh, Russian literature, like pretty out there stuff.
So that's kind of where it all began.
Yes,
that's where it all went wrong.
Yeah.
So I read. I believe reading is very, very important, and still love to read an enormous amount. And as I said, that's how I learned how to write. How to fall in love with a great sentence. How to structure some form of story, although that might be debatable. But certainly the love of sentence and words.
So what were some of your favourites then when you were, I don't know, any age? Is there a book that stands out from your childhood that you're like, oh, recommend that to every child everywhere?
Oh, look, I was an Enid Blyton junkie,
yeah.
and I still, I still kind of think that there is a land at the top of the faraway tree. It was so ingrained in my like my growing up, my DNA, that I just actually, that's just how things are. There are lands at the top of the tree which rotate regularly, and the topsy-turvy land, etc. And then, I think I cycled through all of the standard books, the Maureen and Blyton, the Nancy Drew, there were a lot of ballet stories, a lot of horses, Charlotte's Web, cried myself stupid over that. So they were the kind of the books that that made me, I guess.
Did you take up ballet, or did you take up horse riding?
I took up ballet, and I had absolutely took up horse riding. They were just very small and in my kind of bedroom, but I was there. I had a whole stable. I was very busy looking after those horses. It was a full-time job.
Yeah, definitely. So what about as an adult? Do you read broadly across genres, or do you have a specific area of interest?
I wonder whether I'm actually becoming a little bit more restrictive in what I read. I've loved magic realism for a long time, very much cut my teeth on Gabriel Garcia Marquez, Isabel Allende, those sorts of books, and that's why I loved seeing some Australian magic realism coming. We were talking about Robbie Arnett earlier, that sort of extraordinary stuff. I guess I've actually become more snobby, more discerning.
Discerning, that's
great,
a good
better
word.
About well-written literature. I really just want my authors to have bled and have cried and have put some of their soul
vented
into
a spleen
the book.
or two.
Yes. And I don't have a lot of time now to read things that are just great reads. I need a bit more torture in my life.
Well, damn straight. You are incredibly busy. We actually, at work at Paperback, we were trying to work out how you fit everything in. So you are a consultant emergency physician. So for my sake, can you please elaborate a bit on that? So what is that you do then?
I'm an observer of the crumbling fabric of society.
Oh, I
kind
like
of how
that.
I would put it. I work at Royal Perth Hospital as a consultant, as a specialist in emergency medicine. And you'll all know Royal Perth, that place which doesn't resemble at all any of the parts of this book. We are. I'm sure we'll get to that. It's a very confronting, overbusy, overstretched, underfunded, understaffed, dangerous place. We're the meth capital of the
Yeah.
world, and they all, we have the disenfranchised, the vulnerable, the homeless, the biggest sort of Indigenous population coming through, and it's a nightmare. It really is. But it's a really important job. I still very much believe in it as a role. It's humanity at its rawest, and I'm still very fortunate to be able to work. I only work part-time now. I do a lot of teaching as well.
Yeah, I was about to ask that. So as the consultant specialist, you're called in for the really tricky things that need to be overseen
so very
and
much
gutted out.
it's partly supervisory, but there's not the people we're supposed to be supervising, they're all gone off sick with stress leave, etc. So we end up doing the stuff ourselves. So we do shifts. I'll do late shifts, and we're called in if there's a big trauma. And let me tell you, there's a lot of that.
Oh, yeah. I got a sense of that in the book. I think you conveyed that really well, like the way that the staff of the hospital were just giving you glimpses of their own mental wear and tear. I was like, oh, gosh, yep, this is all very real.
And I really wanted to be able to explore that in the book. The book, obviously, the main character is a chaplain, not a very good chaplain, failed priest, kind of a man struggling with his own faith and his own beliefs, in his self, his life, his history. And I wanted to be able to explore a lot of the issues in the hospital through his eyes rather than a doctor's eyes. So there is a doctor in there who looks nothing like me, with her margarine-coloured hair and her bags under her eyes and just this exhaustion. I just actually wonder whether the entire book was just a plea for help, telling people how tired I was. I really wanted to be able to explore all of those things through a very, very different lens. So that was one of the reasons. It was very interesting to write about those things.
That must have been really therapeutic and on a certain level to see it through a different lens.
I think all writing is therapeutic in a way, in that it's how writers understand the world, only through crafting it over and over again into words. So if understanding is therapy, then absolutely it was therapeutic. Do I feel any better about work after it? No, just the same. But I think very much it's anyone who's a writer in the room will certainly know.
We've got a few of those.
Fantastic, and all power to you, that you know that it is only by crafting things into the written word that you understand any of those crazy whirling thoughts that you have. And it's difficult. I think, was it, I can't remember who made the comment that the definition of a writer is just somebody who finds writing much harder than everybody else. And I think that's true, the act of writing and crafting. Thomas Mann, I think it might have been, or it might not have been. I don't know. A bloke said it. Some bloke.
So where did thank you. Marek. Someone said Marek? Yeah. Baby brain, I'm forgetting. Where did Marek come from? Where did you find Marek? How did he come to you? What were you doing when you were like, oh?
Well, there's a little story about how the basic, very peculiar premise of the book came to me. But where did Marek come from? I'd always had we're talking about formative books and books that I've loved. A book that was really deeply formative in me as a writer was a bit of a cliche really, but Catch-22. And it just, I read it also when I was very young, and just was staggered that anybody could write a book where there was such tragedy and such humour pivoting in the space of a sentence, and just so brilliantly written. And I just had always remembered, like, the beginning lines that Yossarian was in love with a chaplain, and I just loved that so much. And even the word chaplain just gave me such joy, because I would think back to Catch-22. I thought, God damn it, I'm going to write a book with a chaplain. I want a chaplain.
Awesome. That's awesome.
So that's how. And then, of course, things just slowly evolved. They accrete like an oyster or something, metaphor there. and the story takes shape, and this book had many iterations of who was going to tell this story, but the chaplain always stayed, and then he became more and more important, because obviously it's about the things that we believe in. Why do we believe in the things that we do, and who better to tell that than a chaplain who really ought to be believing one thing, but really
is struggling.
Very much so.
Exactly. So what other iterations were there? Who else was going to be your protagonist?
Oh, well, yeah, I had one at one point who was this Dolly Bird drug rep from Moscow, Idaho, for reasons that are not clear to me, named Clara. At some point, obviously, we needed. It was going to be a big pharma story. You know, people trying to. They were going to biological gold. This is great, and I wanted to expose the whole of big pharma. You know, I was going to, rip that whole industry wide open, and it was just terrible. Just like it was forcing, shoehorning a story into trying to tell this thing. So that didn't work. So she got the flick, sadly. But on my next book, we'll have someone coming from Moscow, Idaho, because I can't resist that name.
Yeah.
Irresistible.
Yeah, because you're currently working on something, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah. So when you are working on book, do you kind of limit your reading, or do you read just as much as you usually would, or?
I read just as much as I usually would. I actually just need to be reading, and I find that if I'm not reading, I become weaker. I become skinnier. I don't have the fullness of language and literature in my head all the time. I don't get those surprises, those kind of launch pad points that you need to create new stuff. And that's kind of what we're doing, was creating new stuff from all the things that exist already in the world. So I need to be reading.
Yeah.
And I'm not that discriminatory, really. Just anything. Just hoover it up.
Yeah. So the teaching that you do, because you mentioned that you work part-time as a consultant, so are you teaching with a university, or?
Yeah, I teach both the university, but also the registrars, the trainees that are coming up behind me in emergency medicine. That's mainly what I teach. So the kids about to step into the biggest adult job they'll ever do. And as you get older, you kind of realise that one of the best things you can do is leave a legacy of teaching and trying to be a role model and a mentor, so that, and for me in emergency medicine, it's really my job now is to make sure that when anyone's injured, the people that they turn up and see half know what they're doing. So that's my responsibility now to the community, to society. That's actually the people coming after me now that need to be as good as they possibly can and imbued with all of those really important qualities that I have believed in since I started medicine many moons ago.
So when you write, do you have any rituals to get you into the space? Because you must, you wear a lot of hats. So to be able to get into the, put the writer hat on, do you have certain things to get you in the zone?
Yeah, I've only just learnt that because I'm a slow learner. I'm essentially a very, very slow learner. I'm extremely distractible. I'm actually very expert at procrastination. And it's taken me far too long to realise that I need to have some sort of rituals to sit down at the page and write. And oh my God, it makes such a difference. I put my phone in another room. It's like they sound so simple. Put headphones on. I put some very, very quiet classical music on. I have a little bit of this beautiful perfume that I smell because that's supposed to help.
Oh, yeah, nice.
And then I sit down and I can actually write.
So you engage all your senses before you start.
I do. And it makes a massive difference. So to any of the writers, please learn this 10 years before I did, because
What's your writing space like? Because we just met with Pip Williams last month, and she was telling us that her husband built her this idyllic, beautiful writing room, and it's used for...
Where's my husband?
Yeah, it's used for anything but that. She actually prefers to write at cafes or in her car. So
okay. I have grown-up children who I'm supposed to be an empty nester, and I would be if they didn't stop coming home
Keep
all
coming
the time.
home. Yeah.
And so that, but then they think all the little rooms are for them. So I'm just sort of, I wherever I can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit of a wherever I can
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
It's as good as I've got.
Yeah. So, where did the idea for the alchemy come
So
from?
yeah, so that I kind of have no excuse for this one, but it was actually on the night of my book launch for my first book, which was Dustfall, which was published by UWA Publishing, and I was in the car with my younger brother, and his job is actually as he's a scientist. He was working at UQ at the time, and his job was to produce proteins from bacteria, from E. coli. So completely cheating here. And I'm in the car and I go, and I don't know, and this line just drops into my head. It might have been the wine or the buzz of the book launch. I said, what if one day a scientist who is working with his E. coli and making protein, completely normal job, comes into work and his bacteria have started making gold. And he says, that is ridiculous.
That's what he said? Yeah.
No, don't do that. And so I did it. He's wonderful. He was fantastic. And
Has he read the book?
Oh yeah,
Yeah?
he's in all that. He was fantastic. He really
Yeah.
is. He's stranger than me. So he actually did love it, and he eventually got right into it. And we talked about it a lot over time, because it was it was really important to me to, because part of that theme about faith and what we believe in is to be able to keep both parallel stories or parallel ideas alive the whole time. One is that it could have complete scientific veracity. You could believe, if you're a scientist, you go, actually, that works. And if you wanted to read it along something like a fable or a fairy tale, magical sort of realist stuff, you could have that as well. So I spent a lot of time doing the research to make sure that scientifically it kind of held up, which was, learning about CRISPR, gene editing. I went to my younger brother's lab at UQ, and I dressed up in the white coat and the glasses and with the notebook, asking questions that why is she asking this? This is a very strange question to ask. It was all very, very peculiar, but we did manage to. I managed to kind of craft that sort of. That's my husband, who apparently you're supposed to build me a writing room that's nice and sunny. Yeah, a retreat.
You made it.
Yeah.
You made it. Wonderful.
Anyway.
Just flown in to be here, guys.
He hasn't yet built me the writing room.
Yeah.
So just hold the applause.
So I really loved, without giving away spoilers for those who haven't read it, but I really loved the resolution of the whole story arc of the alchemy, and it had such a satisfying end. And how did you get to that point, and did that surprise you? Are you a plotter?
Oh, absolutely.
Or?
No. The writers will know the difference between a plotter and a pantser.
Yeah.
You've heard it, like a plotter plans everything out, their outlines, etc. Pantser writes by the seat of their pants. So plotting's on the right, plotting's on the left, pantsing on the right. I'm so far right, I'm more right than Trump. So for this book, I just had no idea, just let it kind of roll out on the page.
That must be fun, though.
Oh, it's amazing when it happens. It's totally scary. You don't know whether anything's going to turn up on the page. And, you have these kind of grains of ideas that kind of need to happen to have some sort of resolution. They do say that pantsers need to rewrite a hell of a lot more because you're writing off down some dead end that you go, well, that's just crazy. That can't even happen. But there are some little gems inside it that you can then rewrite, rework. So that was the case here. And I didn't know how it was going to resolve itself at all.
Yeah. Speaking of the rewriting thing, I'm always so fascinated with the concept of to kill your darlings as a writer. Because, you know, like I paint and I find it really hard to let go of something, and, you know, like you have to do it. You've got to move on and it's got to serve the whole thing. But gosh, it's hard. Was there anything that you had to let go of that you found hard, or were there things that you could just easily just drop away?
I guess there's two parts to that. One is as you mature as a writer, it gets easier to kill your darlings. It gets easier to lose those things because you actually realise that whatever you write has to be in service of the story,
Yeah.
not yourself. And the things that you're killing are very often, you know, you either love the language, or it's funny, or it really amuse you, but it's in the service of yourself, not the story. And the story is all. So I've become much better. Then you can use them in other ways, but I think I was going to say a second thing there, and of course this is what happens. You start talking about one thing, and I've forgotten the other thing I was going to say. But the most important thing I think I've learned over the last decade of writing these novels is learning how to read my own work as a reader rather than a writer. And the moment that I can read it as a reader, and I know what story is, I know what good story, a good arc is, I know when there's tension and pace and believability, credibility about the story. The moment when I start to do that, killing your darlings is easy.
Yeah.
You become a different person. You become the writer for others rather than yourself. So it actually, you know.
And is that how do you know that moment then? It is through that, when you're getting swept up in the tensions and things, that you realise that you're reading as a reader, not as a writer.
Yes, it is difficult to know, and I think that was the point that I was going to make, is that you one of the other important things as a writer is to be really disinvested or disarticulated from the end process of publication. Writers, that we are all so caught up in having, you know, a book with a traditional publisher with some little logo down the bottom here to say you've kind of that's it. That's all you care about. It's getting your book into this sort of format on a shelf. And if you do that, if you're a slave to that end process, you'll never be able to read your work. You can't do the service to the story. It's about service to the story, absolute 100% service to the story. And if your service is to whatever else marker of success that you have as a writer, you'll always screw up. There will be something blocking your ability to write the story that you need to actually get published. So the moment that you let go of that ambition is the moment that you can really, really hold on to you can really craft a story, a real story that is a standalone, that is yours only you could have written.
Yeah. Does anybody have any questions? Yes, I'll bring you the.
Do you want me to?
Oh, good on you, John. Thanks, mate.
Don't have a lapel.
Does Megan speak?
May I hold it?
Yeah.
Thank you.
There was a dress code, did you not? You have to have lapels.
I missed that email. Okay, great. Scary. Hello, thank you for coming. I'm in my former life was an English teacher. I wondered if you were a writer when you were a student. And also, my second question is, have you done some writing courses once you decided somewhere along the line that you wanted to be a writer and you wanted to craft a story to publish?
Absolutely. I wrote an enormous amount of angst-ridden poetry. It was uniformly terrible. I didn't realise it at the time. I didn't ever have the courage to submit anything, and that is, you know, once you make the commitment to submit, then you're kind of taking the first step on a ladder, and I never did that. I was a writer in my heart, a poet in my soul, but never really did anything with it. And then I spent kind of 20 years just trying to be a good doctor without killing too many people. That was kind of my like entry level for life for a good 20 years. And then I came back to it and I had a bit more bandwidth, a bit more headspace. Okay, right, I'll write a novel. I'll just do that. That's time for me. And I wrote stuff. I just sort of vomited out a novel, my first novel, and had no idea how bad it was and how hard writing was. And I was told in no uncertain terms by people I showed it to that it was terrible. And it's harder when you're older. It's like learning any craft. You need to be able to take feedback. You need to go, this is not good enough. It's not reaching the standard that I want. And have people tell you that it's actually not that good. And it is, I was kind of at the top of my profession as a doctor, and all of a sudden I'm being told, this is terrible. This is terrible. Go back, rewrite it, start again. So I had to learn to take and be insightful, reflective, all those things which are vital if you can learn any sort of craft, and writing is a craft. I did take a goodly number of courses. I consider myself a serial dropper-outer of courses. I would sign up. I would pay so much money. I'm going to do this course or this degree, and I'd go to about 3 things. I just can't, and I just wouldn't finish any of them. But they were useful.
Oh my God, high five, me too.
High five. Here's to dropping out of stuff. Yes, I did, but I've done many courses, and more as I've gone along, really, and I'm very happy. And I think the further on I get in the writing journey, the more I'm happy to say, I don't know. I'm just a nobody. I'm a nothing. I'm really happy to learn. It's possibly easier now. I've got this time, the mark of success, the book on the shelf in bookstores, and I know how hard it is. I just know for the writers in the room it's just so tough getting books published. The publishing industry, everything about it is almost impossible. But I say almost, it's not quite. It's doable, but it's very, very, very hard. And I've got more comfortable not having to prove myself so much, but it's kind of easy when then you've got a book that you're kind of happy with, to say that. It's much harder when you don't have a book published. It's a real journey, and I've been through every single step of the way. Yes.
We were sort of talking a little bit about that much earlier before people started to turn up with Renee. Actually, we were chatting before about the idea of when you're writing and when you're working on something, that you kind of have to protect yourself in a sense and not think about the end goal too much, and not get bogged down in, will sales go all right, or how will the launch be, or any of that kind of thing. You have to just focus on the writing.
Absolutely. And it is, what does success mean? We all have our own definition of what is success, and the problem in literature and writing is there's no end point. There's no top point. We say there is, if I just get published, I'll be happy. Then it's, I just get a listing, I'll be happy. I'll never ask for anything again. If I just win an award, if I just get on something, if I just have this publisher, I'll be happy. It
if I can just
never
be at Paperback
ends.
Book Club, I'll be happy.
If I've made it. I'm here. It's an absolute truth, universally acknowledged, that if a single reader reads your book and connects with it, and it changes them a little, just one single reader, that is kind of, I cannot imagine a better definition of success. Yeah. Absolutely. A truly authentic one-on-one experience. And the more I have, the longer it's taken me a long time to figure that out. It's become very rich and rewarding, and I'm now much less focused on those other kind of metrics of whatever success might be as a writer. I get to do it. Occasionally I get to write a sentence that I can go, whoa, how did I do that? That's amazing. Like 1 in a million of my sentences, I'll go, that's amazing. I've always loved sentences. We were talking about before, that discerning reader, that reading a book where a sentence moves you so much, you have to put the book down and go,
and really sit and think about it.
How did they do that in a sentence? and to be able to do that myself, kind of like that also, they're my two markers of success, that if I can occasionally do that and have a single reader be moved, it's all worthwhile. All of the pain, the tears, there's been a lot of tears. There's been a lot of, I think both of the men in the front row, they've seen those tears.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. You don't laugh.
I hope it's a spectrum of tears to lots of tears of joy as well. Yes, John, you have a question. No, you will need to use this just so that it's picked up on the video, please, sir. Thank you.
Given you dropped out of all the writing courses you attended,
Most.
and now you have success, would you yourself run a writing course?
Ooh, good question.
I would love to run a writing course, mainly because I would perhaps like to run the sort of writing course that I needed back in the day when I had no clue.
Undropoutable.
Because then, there would be penalties if you dropped out of my course. And no, just to be able to share the love of perhaps different things. I mean, there are a lot of courses out there. A lot of people are teaching a lot of writing stuff. But there's always room for different ways of teaching and learning, and just the love and the joy of writing. The absolute, I mean, if I would teach, it may even be the things that the most important thing to me is the sentence level, the self-contained world of wonders that sentences can be, because that's it. That's the tool. They're not words. They're sentences as writers. That's the thing that we want to get. That's where the magic is. Absolutely. And I just adore them so much that I would love to share that joy.
Yes.
Absolutely. So you heard it here first, team. It's the sentence is a self-contained world of wonder.
Oh,
By
nice.
MJ. Come and join me.
Does anybody have any questions? No, that's all right. We can keep going.
We can definitely keep
Oh,
chatting.
yes. Hang on. John, just wait for John to pass it to you.
I love that. Let's just on the fly. Thank you.
You're speaking your joy of sentences. I find a lot of joy in words, and I found that in your book, I'd read a book previously that was a little bit more like Thomas Hardy, where it takes 300 pages to describe the and then you managed to find perfect words that brought all those sentences on that page all into one word that just surmised the whole lot. How did you do that?
Thank you. Because that is really important to me as a reader, as a writer, and part of this just love. I do spend harking a little bit back to the fact of being able to read as a reader. I have this allergy, I get anaphylaxis to cliches. So if it's been written before, if an adjective has been used before with that same noun or whatever, then it's done. It's already a cliche. And it's about finding new ways to describe things. It's such a joy. It's hard work. It's really hard. And so metaphors, similes are just such magic. But they need to be used very carefully and in a non-cliched way. Of course, we use metaphors when the words run out. So finding a fresh new metaphor is just like, whoa! I've uncovered gold. I've found something new that hasn't been written before. It's so exciting. So I do spend a lot of time thinking about that. I have kind of 3 rules as a writer that's taken me a while to figure out. But one is there's only 3 rules to me. Is like, you need to see things anew. You need to think of those things then in a new way, and then write them in new, fresh ways. So if you've got those 3 things, that's when you can produce new work. I don't want to read. I have no time for cliches. I will now become a snob. But just very, very briefly. But if anything is being described in one way. It's just it's kind of it's not well, it's lazy writing in a way. Writing is hard. Writing is really, 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 really hard. And if you've read something, everything's always described in the same way. I can't even think of something at the moment on the top of my head. But if everything's always been described in the same way, then it's boring, and the reader can't be kind of their brain. It's all about neuroscience. They can't be shocked into thinking, oh, I can really now see this in a new way. So that's kind of the key to me, to be able to produce something new.
Literary alchemy.
Literary alchemy. Oh, you've just done it. She's gone and done it. That's two words that haven't been put together that I've heard anyway.
But that's what you're seeking, right? That's what you're seeking.
It is in a way. It's just respect for the reader too.
Yeah.
I just don't think that I want to produce something that's. I mean, it's not that you don't want things to be easy. You want things to be easily read, but just not easy because they're just stock standard. That whole the stereotype, the story of stereotypes is kind of interesting. You may well know that when the printing press first came out, that they would have these little stock lines, these little in their metal kind of brands that would go on papers and printed word like as cool as a cucumber or whatever, where everyone would understand it, and it was called a stereotype. So that they would just be able to have all these words together, just stamp them in. That's how the word came about of a stereotype. So I hope that I've taught you one single thing tonight.
That's awesome. Is that going back to like Gutenberg?
I think so. Yeah. Like those early days, anyway. Perhaps not quite Gutenberg, but not far off. When all, particularly newspapers, whatever they had,
collective,
they had, and they would have kind of types together. It would make it quicker and easier. Just that stamp. Cucumbers are always cool, or if it's cool as a cucumber. That's what we say. Yeah. And it became very much, routine, etc.
And recognisable, and
absolutely. And that's no longer. We don't have stamps. We have computers, and we write on
computers.
And emojis. That's right.
Preemptive
gosh.
text. Yeah.
And now we've got AI.
I know.
ChatGPT doing it for us. They'll go back to the whole stereotype, won't they? Because that's what they'll be fed on. Those voracious algorithms will be consuming those, and we'll go back to them. Full circle.
I absolutely love your focus on words, and I have quite an advanced 10-year-old grandchild who was talking. She's in primary school, and she said to me today, so, I'm thinking I'll do these subjects and so on. And she said, and she's quite a good speller and all that kind of thing. And she said, do they have ATAR spelling? And do they have ATAR vocabulary? And I had to say to her, no, they have literature, you can do English, and hopefully you'll do both. The question that I have for you out of that, I love your discussion. I hope I'll be able to show her actually the video of what you've been saying. I think she would appreciate it. She's quite advanced. She used She used the word vicarious the other day, which I went, oh my God, what does that mean?
What's her name?
Her name, Amy.
Amy, keep writing.
Yeah, I hope so. She's keen. But however, I did wonder, in all of your construction of sentences and so on, that discussion that you've just shared with us, dialogue. How do you work that? And along with that also, I wondered in the book of a female writer. I don't mean to be offensive. I hope I'm not going in dangerous territory. But how do you write a male perspective? Was that a deliberate choice? You said earlier that your perspective, you wanted Marek as a chaplain to see the hospital not as a doctor but as somebody else. But also his thoughts, his dialogue, his development as a character and perspective as a male. How did you handle that?
Amazing introductions into very, very big topics. Probably the easier one is dialogue, writing dialogue. I have this, it's a bit of a cliche, but I have in my head that all dialogue must be sparkling. When we write dialogue in literature and novels, it's got to sound exactly like normal conversation, except nothing like it. So because you can't, I mean, no one wants to listen to actually what we really say, but it has to sound just so much better. And it's a real challenge. I think the two things are, it needs to sparkle. It needs to just zing you every time someone opens their mouth in a novel. And they also have to have their own very individual ways of speaking. So going through the book when you're editing things, this person needs to be identifiable just by the words they use in their dialogue. So it's really a very important part. At first, when I started writing, I'm never writing dialogue. I just cannot write dialogue. It's very, very difficult. But as long as I have in my head, when I'm editing particularly, it doesn't happen in the first draft because the first draft's absolute rubbish. It needs to sparkle. So bring out the sparkle. Like I think Clive James talks about all his sentences. He'll just take a sentence, he'll turn it over and over and over until it catches the light. And that's kind of what you want to do. Just each line that's written, you just turn it, you work it until it starts to sparkle. So really, really important to get dialogue right. You just don't want to bore your reader. You just don't want to bore them by talking like we all normally talk, which can be a little bit pedestrian. Much bigger question is writing from a male perspective. And it's a huge topic at the moment. Whose stories can we tell? When is it appropriation of other people's experiences? I've kind of been very wary about this as a doctor. I've often written medical stuff, written like blog posts and lots of things from a medical perspective. And it's always been somewhere in the pit of my core that I can't tell patient stories. Patient stories belong to the patients. And it's kind of oozed its way out into the rest of my writing, is that you can't take other people's stories, which is kind of a little bit of a segue into how can we write other people's experiences. Obviously it's a very big issue, particularly when it comes to, in Australia, Indigenous stories, Aboriginal stories, other marginalised groups. When you're a white woman, you're a white wealthy woman, how can you write anybody else's stories and get away with it? And it's a massive worldwide wrestle at the moment. People like Lionel Shriver, who had that huge ruckus at the Sydney Writers' Festival, and she insisted, I'm a writer, we can write anybody's stories. If we're prevented from writing other people's stories, what have we got left? If we can't imagine everything and we are having to write within guardrails, what have we got as writers? I think there is some medium. Every writer will find their own kind of path. To me, it's as long as I'm writing with a deep respect for other people's stories. And there are limits. I would never write in the voice of the stolen generation, particularly, I'm a multiple generation Australia, but I would never, that's a very particular issue, writing from Aboriginal point of view, etc. I couldn't do that. But to say I can't write the story from a man's point of view they're just men anyway. I just said that because my husband and John are in the front. But no, that's just a joke. We need as writers, because if I can only write my own story, I'm going to write the most boring story in the world. I'm going to write the story of, well, it's not quite the most boring because I'm in emergency medicine. But I'm still just a white woman, with far too much wealth compared to the rest of the world, whose main problems are my children won't leave home when they promise me they will. Nobody wants to read that book. So I have to be able to explore many other issues. I don't know the answer. Anyway, that's the long way of saying I don't know. The other thing about the men in this, why were two men writing? People say, you're a feminist. Why the hell didn't you have a female protagonist in this? Where's the females aren't actually all that nice in this book. Apart from Dolly, yes, apart from Dolly, whom I adore. absolutely adore. But it was because that was just the way it was, and I just couldn't write them as females. They were men, and I was also writing this story about a gentle friendship between soft men who didn't really know how to have friendships.
That was a beautiful thing, the development of the friendship between Hugo and Marek. Yeah.
So I just that felt important to me to explore as a writer.
Yes. Hang on, Cheryl, you'll need this so it's picked up on the video.
Sorry.
The video is only for Amy. Let's just make that clear.
I'm really interested in that cultural appropriation contest as well. And Craig Silvey has recently, after his most recent prize, he addressed that in such a way similar to what you've just addressed it to. So if Lionel Shriver's here, I mean, he's further up this way, and seemingly you are as well. But he, and we all know he's written from many different perspectives and through many characters, including a Labrador, which was just wonderful. But like you, he says the idea of, or the notion of cultural appropriation or writers' freedom is around the respect for people who may be, or who are marginalised and therefore may be terribly affronted and offended. But he said that as a writer, who's a white male writer, he said that he has the freedom to write about almost anything and from whatever perspective he chooses, as long as it's within the parameters of respect for any marginal people. So, yeah, that's... Yeah, he does. Lots of consultation, yes, yeah. Did anyone else see that article? It's kind of doing its rounds. It's really worth reading. Yeah.
Thanks. Did you have consultation when you were creating Marek?
No, people did ask, did I speak to the chaplains at Royal Perth? And I didn't. I perhaps should have, although I had a couple have read it and they're good with it. And I have spent a lot of time around that. I didn't want them to, I didn't want to be wrong about who Marek was. I didn't want them to go, no, he wouldn't think that. And well, he has to think that because he's such a flawed individual. I remember hearing a conversation between Richard Flanagan and the writer who wrote the Shipping News, Annie Proulx, and she was telling, they were on stage together and she was talking about how the fact she researched about 5-6 years for every book. And Richard Flanagan goes, oh, Jesus, we're Australian. We don't do research. And it just felt kind of right. We just kind of, that's kind of the research that I am doing.
Actually, I think Robbie Arnott too, when we spoke with him, he was like, well, I mean, there's so much to come from his own family history with his latest book, but yeah, a few authors that we've spoken to have actually come as
and you kind of don't want it to spoil this. You've got this idea in your head. It's like, I don't want to be wrong about what this person, where this person came from and who they are and what they think. So no, I'm not so good on the research.
Yeah, mine's a really easy question. It's actually about the book. I'd just like to know if the cleaner was someone that you thought of first, or if you went back and thought of it at the end and slotted them in along the way.
Great question. No, Liliana came in at the very end. I needed somebody. I'm going to spoil stuff. And I might, talking about spoiling stuff, I might do a little reading if that's all right.
Yes,
but yeah.
We do put up a thing saying spoilers.
Yeah, there's a spoiler. There needed to be gold dust in the air somehow. And
thank you.
Just the fact that she needed to tell stories. I love the Babushka doll sort of story. There's nested stories within stories within stories, and hers was a story within a story within a story. And at the very bottom, when there's that tiny little Babushka doll and you can't pull that head off, there's a woman who is going around the hospital just talking to herself because she's got no one left to tell her stories to, and she's crunching out the stories with her teeth.
Yeah.
So that's she came slowly, but that's it just felt right in the whole layering of the story on top of the story on top of the story.
Yeah. Yep. I loved it. I absolutely loved it because you're there with the mystery and the wonder, and can you suspend disbelief and go with this and think, yeah, alchemy could it be possible? And then to know, and all of the heavyweights that are behind it going, yeah, this could be happening. And then the resolution at the end is the person that's least noticed in the hospital, it was beautiful.
And it kind of was important that it didn't matter.
Yeah.
It just didn't matter how it happened. It just did, because the point was, why do people believe in the things that they do? What has gone on in their lives? What's created them? What's been their development as a human being in this world to make them believe what they do? And that felt a very urgent story to tell in this day and age of kind of anti-science and this rage against the facts and having my own, my opinion trumps anything. What makes us believe what we do? Why does one person believe something very, very ferociously, and their best friend believes completely the opposite? And when there kind of is, what is fact? It was just a really fascinating thing, and it seemed like a great vehicle to be able to do that.
I just laughed loud. Just reminded me of, was it Paul, the brother-in-law, who as soon as he sees that this could be an opportunity, he's ringing all the time. He just wants to get in from the ground. Yeah,
I'm in.
Actually, he hasn't read anything about science.
No.
Doesn't know anything about it. He's just like, yep.
Yeah.
It was so funny.
Yeah.
Well, are there any final questions before Michelle does a reading for us? I think they just want you to read, Michelle.
I will read. I have a choice when I do these readings to read from the very start.
Do you want me to hold the microphone for you?
Because I'm getting old, and I was just saying about these things. I saw myself in some photos of when my first book came out, and I was doing some readings at a writers' festival, and I've got the book, and I'm going like this time. And my very best girlfriend, who's this foul-mouthed, short Indian ophthalmologist, says, "It's time, sweetie. It's time." And she bought me some reading glasses, so Hank, bear with me. So I'm actually I can probably hold that.
Oh, you can?
I'm going to read from towards the very end, since most of you read the book. It's not really a spoiler. When Marek entered the ICU, he was expected. A clerk directed him to a different bed in a side room with the door closed. He walked, or felt he plunged, into a scene of calm, a sea rocking with gentle waves of mechanical noise. The mother walked across and embraced him. "Thank you for coming," she said with reverence, as though he had brought God. The family had set up the room with relics, family photographs, papers, mementos of a brief life. A scatter of electric candles had been placed around, adding a flicker, ethereal and strange, to the fluorescence and the blue pulse of the monitors. The nurses moved back so Marek could stand close to the parents over their son and pray. He thought hard about what he would say. And although his voice shook and the smell of medicine gone stale made his head heavy, he spoke of loss, of support, of love. "And will God commend you to heaven," he finished with. "Will he ensure your soul lives on forever, not just in those who love you, but in those who will live on because of you?" The words came out with ease, and while Marek touched the son's forehead to anoint his passage, he felt light. The door was open and they could see a grey gathering of people, an assembled team ready to wheel him off. One was looking at his watch. The mother spoke to the nurse. "Just a few more minutes, please." His cousin Bella wanted to say her own farewell. "Please?" The request was relayed to the leader of the team. He nodded and motioned 5. The mother squeezed Marek's hand, and the 3 of them again bowed their heads. The moment was coming. Through the door, a nurse escorted in a young girl. "This is Bella," the father said to Marek. "She's 12. A 12-year-old girl, and Marek could barely look at her. The machines surrounding the boy, all their steel and plastic, their inanimate beeps and sing-song loops, their swinging and beating and breathing down to their molecular and lifeless parts, although temporarily all the life the boy had was still just insensible metal, Marek knew, unrusting, immortal. This room, too, was bland and without sentience, its walls and doors, the lights and the steel of the trolley, but there was Bella, standing at the foot of the bed with her white, soft skin, her alive, shining eyes, her lithe posture and smooth muscle, taking a deep breath, readying herself. A breath which let out a single note, a song she'd prepared for her older, beloved cousin. The nurses stopped. All the workers throughout the ICU did, as though that single note travelled out from the room, through the door, through the ducts, coming out of the vents in its purity. The machines all quietened as the note became the airwaves itself, a note that was everything alive. Marek could feel it flow into where the steam had been inside him. The note continued until it was replaced by others no less beautiful, no less pure. The notes became a song, became a psalm, became a requiem. And as the brief aria of Bella's voice concluded, it returned to that one single perfect note, and Marek sensed the machines hold their breath, the living among all that was not. All was still when Bella was done. Marek could hear nothing, not so much as an echo for seconds, and it was a greater peace than death that moment. The boy was to be scattered better than ash all over the country, and it was as though everyone realised it at the same time. It occurred to Marek that this could well be deemed a miracle, true and tiny in here, but spreading as ripples throughout the country so that others could live, something from nothing. It was then time, sweet time, the anaesthetic team came in, working in quiet, orchestrated efficiency, one with a solitary tear on his cheek. The lines were changed over, the cylinders swapped and transport machines hooked up. The mother leant over the boy and kissed his forehead. The father did the same. Each movement, every last moment carried a lifetime of meaning. Every shape and every sound and every occurrence did, because they were the humans and they brought the occurrences to life. Finding meaning and connection. That's what they did. And the world was inside that little room until the door opened for the last time, letting the entire light of the universe in. And Marek prayed to God and to the universe, which at this point he realised might be entirely the same thing.
I'm glad you selected that passage. That was beautiful.
Thank you.
Any final questions or anything for Michelle?
Hints at your next word.
Yes. What? Yeah.
Yeah. Look. Often people, writers will say it's kind of we're superstitious people. We can't talk too much about it. I have been down this last week, squirreled away writing the next novel, which is kind of under contract, and I do have a deadline, which is a terrifying thing. It's a novel. It's weird. Set in a very strange place.
Are you enjoying it though? Like, are you enjoying?
I'm loving it. Yeah. I am loving it. I'm loving it. It's got a title.
Ooh.
I'll tell you the title.
Yeah.
It's called Sulak Canyon.
Sulak Canyon.
Go look that up, team.
Yeah. Sulak Canyon.
That's all I can really say.
Yeah.
It's in the it's a little bit more outlined. But anyway, we'll see. I don't know what it will be. It's much more. It's women. This is women. There's some rage going on in this one.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say it's a little bit more outlined, you mean it's less pantser?
A little bit less pantser. Although I say that and then I write a scene and go, "Whoa, I didn't know we were going here."
Yeah.
So there's a lot of pantsing going on still.
Yeah.
You can't change your spots.
That's
she
right.
says, as a leopard.
Yeah. Gosh.
Well, just a quick question.
Yeah.
How long does it take you to write a
How long does it take you to write your book?
Look, the first, it's getting shorter, which is a damn good thing because I ain't getting any younger. It's the first one was about 6 years. This one was about 4.5, 5. This one I've got about 9 months.
Whoa!
I have been thinking about it for a while. Yeah, now I've got an agent and a publisher, and they're got the whip cracking.
How did you feel when they said?
I can't believe my great fortune to be working with like the world's best publisher.
Of course,
so I'll do whatever. Yes, sir.
That goes
9
without
months.
saying.
Yes, sir.
But
Yes, ma'am.
yeah, 9 months. Wow.
No, that's kind of a little bit. That's my agent. He's very naughty. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, but
We'll see.
yeah,
I have no idea. No idea.
To go from no time frame to having a time frame.
Yeah. Look, I don't know. Honestly, I don't even know if we're going to have a planet to live on in 9 months' time. So, I'm good with anything.
So you'll enjoy writing.
Whatever.
Yeah.
I'll go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you very much for being with us tonight. Thanks for coming down to Albany to see us.
I love Albany deeply. We both love Albany. It's really special. And so grateful to be here, really, and thank you so much for reading and coming along to these things and engaging.
Thank you for Marek's story; it was wonderful. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, and do you want me to sign in?
Yeah. So Michelle can sign books if people if anyone bought their book and they would like it signed. If you don't have a book, we've got a couple left here. Otherwise, we've also got next month's book there.
I can't sign somebody else's book.
No. But if you want to get next month's book, we've got Karen Brooks' book there. Yeah. I'm getting mine signed.
Yeah. Shall I sit? I'll go and sit with the lads down there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Great. Well, thank you.
Oh, that was wonderful. That was so fun. Thank you so much.